Where do the Boston Celtics go from here? As this came across everyone's timeline last night, Damian Lillard will be headed back to the Portland Trail Blazers and will not be a Boston Celtic as he inked a 3-year, $42 million contract. So on today's show, we're going to talk about where the Celtics go from here and some great news that Brad Stevens provided for Celtics fans this offseason. Before we get into all of it, though, make sure you are subscribed to the channel for the best Celtics offseason content on YouTube. If you look at the leaderboard right now for chat sports channels covering the NBA, well, Celtics today is not doing so hot. We're actually almost half of what 76ers now has gained in the month of July. So do me a favor, go down below and hit that subscribe button for daily Boston Celtics content all offseason long. And to climb up this leaderboard a little bit, we want to beat the Warriors, Sixers, Heat, and Knicks. Come on. All right, let's talk about it. Damian Lillard headed back to the Portland Trail Blazers on a 3-year, $42 million contract to return to the Pacific Northwest. And the deal is expected to include a couple of things that, Boston really could not surmise in an offer to Damian Lillard. Not only the non-taxpayer mid-level exception of $14 million a season, but also Lillard will be getting a no-trade clause in this deal, where you have to have 8 years of service in the NBA and spend 4 years with a specific team, and then you're eligible for a no-trade clause on a new contract. And Lillard is getting that here. So I guess the recruiting that Jason Tatum was doing for Damian Lillard to bring him to Boston just wasn't enough. But in reality, it's not like Lillard didn't choose Boston because of Tatum or the organization. No, he got a fat payday to go back to Portland, be around his family, and that's the situation that he was wanting this entire offseason. And the Celtics did offer a deal to Dame, as well as the Minnesota Timberwolves and a bunch of other teams around the NBA. They offered up just a regular taxpayer mid-level exception because that's all that they could offer at that point. There was really no way that they could have gotten to $14 million. And even with the non-taxpayer mid-level exception, or the taxpayer being offered to Dame Lillard, they still would have had to make moves before getting that all finalized. They're still over the second apron at this point, so they wouldn't really even have access to the taxpayer mid-level exception until they got under that number. So now we shift gears, as Dame is not going to be a Celtic at this point, it seems like ever, unfortunately for C's fans, to where we look at the Celtics roster as a whole as it stands today. And Brad Stevens was talking to media at Summer League and all this good stuff, and he had to say this, which I thought was pretty great news, all things considered. We know how the Celtics roster looks at this point. He said, we're very comfortable with this group heading into next season. And look, he could say this. I'm sure he has to say this. I'm personally not that comfortable with this rotation heading into the next season, but we all knew with Tatum going down with the Achilles, the ceiling of the Boston Celtics would be capped. And we see right now that it's looking like a starting five will consist at least of Peyton Pritchard, Derek White, and Jaylen Brown. After that, there's question marks, but my best guess at this point would be a George Niang at the 4. Maybe a Sam Hauser could get slotted in there as well. And then Neemias Queta, just for the familiarity alone, being the starting center as it stands right now for Boston. Off of the bench, you have a Anthony Simons, a Luka Garza, Sam Hauser, Xavier Tillman, who potentially could be in the starting lineup as a small ball 5 as well. Baylor Shireman, Jordan Walsh, Ugo Gonzalez, as well as Josh Minott and J.D. Davis in there. As far as the young talent goes, some of those contracts are non-guaranteed heading into the season. So as it stands right now, the Celtics are $700,000 around above the second apron. I think it's 207.8, and they're at $208.5 million on the payroll. So they have to make some moves. They're not going to be heading into this next season as a second apron team. Yes, they're probably in all likelihood going to still be a taxpayer next season with just the limited funds around the league that are able to absorb these big Celtics contracts like an Anthony Simons or maybe even a George Niang, which that wouldn't even get you to the luxury tax line. So they're going to be a first apron team come this season. So to get there, as they're still, like I said, $700K over that second apron, they're not going to be there. They have to cut some guys. And there's some non-guaranteed contracts on the bill right now that are looking like the guys on the chopping block for Boston. Neemias Queta, and it seems to me that he is clearly the more unlikely of these two to be cut this season, just with how the Celtics front court looks and the depth at that position. You're going to need a guy like Neemias Queta, who has been in the system for a couple of seasons now, to have at least some continuity at that center position. So now we look to a guy like Jordan Walsh, who could be on the chopping block here as his contract is non-guaranteed, at least fully non-guaranteed. And Walsh, he was a second-round pick a couple of years ago. He's still a very young talent. I think he's only 21 years old potentially at this point. And throughout the Summer League, where it kind of felt like do or die for Jordan Walsh, he put on. It is now actually the Celtics' all-time leader in Summer League points as he has gone through 3 different tours over in Vegas. 15 points a game this time around, 4 rebounds. He was shooting the 3 ball at a really solid clip as well. And we know the physical tools that Jordan Walsh possesses as a defender. Really long wingspan, solid frame, that doesn't really get pushed around all too much. So I like his defensive versatility, but, is he actually an NBA level threat offensively? That the jury's still out on that, and we'll see early on in the season if Walsh can actually carve out a role in this lineup. But there's a chance that he might not end up being on the roster when it's all said and done and the season begins in October. Walsh could be cut, but then you think about that, they get right under that first apron. Are there going to be more moves after that for the Boston Celtics? Because we know they want to get as close to the luxury tax, or at least try to get rid of some of these repeater penalties or minimize them as best they can when they're not really contending this next season. So, Jordan Walsh could get cut to get under the first apron or under the second apron. But where will more moves come? I think the Celtics will be wanting to cut even more salary next season and beyond. Brad Stevens had this to say about what their mindset is with trades and moves and stuff like that. He said, "We don't want to take away our chance to use our draft picks to become the best that we can be over the next few years just to make a move to help save money. I think that that's been very clearly stated to me. We'll continue to look at how we can make things a little bit better or tweak things around the edges, and maybe something comes up in the next couple of weeks, but that's been our mindset." Look, we continue to hear the same thing over and over again with Brad Stevens and how he's kind of going about maneuvering this Celtics roster and salary cap books, to be quite frank. He's not going to make a hasty move just to get off of the money. And if you disagree with that and point to the Drew Holiday and the Porzingis trades, well, around the league, people have thought that the Celtics would have to attach first round draft capital in order to move off of those big deals. Well, actually, Brad Stevens didn't have to do that, and he got off of $24 million or so in the process. So, those weren't straight cost-cutting deals. Those were deals that made sense for the Boston Celtics as far as keeping their first-round draft capital for the foreseeable future and getting off of massive chunks of money in the process. And I guess kind of looking ahead to who could potentially be moved in the Celtics at this point, with the Damian Lillard news coming out, I think it at least marginally, it doesn't guarantee a spot for Simons by any means, but Lillard to Portland, at least kind of to me, marginally increases the chances of keeping Anthony Simons heading into next season. Now, we have heard over the past couple of weeks or so, honestly dating all the way back to when the Celtics acquired him in the Drew Holiday trade, that they're not married to Anthony Simons in the slightest. And according to multiple reports that we've heard at this point, the Celtics not only could be open to, they could be actively trying to trade Anthony Simons in order to gain more salary cap relief heading into next season. Pretty ironic that we got the welcome post here that the Celtics posted on Twitter. So Brad Stevens has said that they like the skill set that Simons can provide heading into next season, but I know if the right deal comes along that Brad's not going to hesitate if it makes the most sense for the Celtics and their future. So predict it for me down in the comments section. Does Anthony Simons play a full season in Boston? We're not done talking Celtics trades just yet, but you let me know down in the comment section, yes or no. What do you think? Simons playing a full season in green? All right, we'll talk about more as far as the Celtics trade and all the things that they have to do in order to clean up their books for next season. And I love the Brad Stevens kind of mentality through this all. He feels comfortable and he feels confident, calm. Even with the Celtics roster looking kind of bleak and they're still being really, really tied up financially over that second apron, it is great news. I'm not being facetious here. I'm telling you, this is great news that we hear from our GM that he is comfortable being in the position that they are right now, because it's one of the ugliest in the NBA. Brian Robb from Mass Live had this to kind of say about the whole situation, and he said that the public stance from Stevens is a very encouraging message from an ownership level, assuming it holds true. Boston having the ability to stay in the tax from a financial flexibility standpoint during a non-contending season bodes well for this group's spending power in the future. If you think about it, the new ownership, or at least even the old ownership as well, they would be in a position where they probably wouldn't want to spend as much money this upcoming season with the Celtics not being contenders. So the fact that they're open to doing that is really, really awesome. Now, they also said that plenty of contenders around the NBA have given up first-round picks to cut some spending and tax bills lately. The Celtics posturing that they will not be one of those teams publicly should at least help Stevens in trade negotiations while cutting payroll, or where cutting payroll could be a goal. So like I said, it seems like ownership, both old, the Gruspek crew, and new with Bill Chisholm and company, they trust Brad Stevens. They understand that he's one of the smartest basketball minds on the entire God's green earth. So they're going to put in their full confidence that he's going to make the moves that help them financially as well as help this team contend for years to come with Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, leading the way. We'll talk more Celtics trades and what could be happening down the line in just a moment. Make sure you guys get hooked up with this awesome deal that we have with our friends over at Fanatics. Let's reminisce on the good times here. Let's rock a Celtics championship shirt from 2024 when things were good and confetti was falling from the top of TD Garden. Go get it today for an absolute discount at the link that we have in the description. It's in the second paragraph. So scroll down, open the description box, and you guys can see a clickable link in there to go get this discounted Celtics 2024 championship shirt for $17. It was nearly $40. Now it's 17. So go get that awesome deal. Link is in the comment section and description of today's video. Go get yourself a Celtics 2024 title shirt today. So when you think about what the Celtics are going to do next, and you think about the ownership standpoint of all of this, yes, Brian Robb says that from an ownership level, this is all encouraging, but are they really going to let Brad Stevens still amass $88 million in luxury tax penalties? I'm sure they want to get it down as low as possible, when the trade deadline comes around, and we know that the luxury tax repeater penalties hit at the end of the season, so they have to make a deal before the deadline in order to get off as much money as possible. More from Brian Robb right here, saying that it's evident that more moves are coming here for this year when you look at the reality of Boston's roster outlook and their luxury tax math. Finding ways to trim money now, as far as moving Simons potentially or Niang, without losing future assets like draft picks, feels like it will be the path for Boston heading into next season. Luxury tax bills don't lock into the end of the regular season, so in-season maneuvering is also very much in play at this point. And look, I think it's going to be until the season, until any of those moves are made. As far as what Boston could be doing, they're not really married to Anthony Simons. They're also not really married to Georges Niang either. And he is in a unique situation because the $8.2 million that he makes on his contract, that fits into a lot of trade exceptions around the NBA. And I've already looked at a couple of suitors out there that probably could use a guy like Georges Niang on their roster. So I don't think it'll be all too difficult to move off of him, whether it's before the season or into game action in 2025, 2026. Now, as far as who else could be dealt for Boston, I really only think that there's like 3 names that make sense to even deal, because if you're not one of these 3 guys, then you either make a ton of money and you're a big-time starter, long-term piece, or you're on an elite value like a Peyton Pritchard, or you make like $2 million, and it's just not even worth trading at that point. So as far as the trade candidates, in order of most likeliest to least likely getting traded, I'd say Georges Niang is number 1, Anthony Simons is number 2, and Sam Hauser is number 3. They've been pretty clear throughout this offseason so far that they want to keep Sam Hauser, and they love the value of his contract. So looks like he's going to be staying in Boston for the foreseeable future. Look to Niang and Simons as names that will be moved in the next calendar year for Boston in order to get their books all cleared up. But look, I don't expect that move to come in the next week or so, the next 2 weeks, even the next month or so, to be frank with you guys. I would say that I don't expect another big move or like a Simons-level trade all the way until the season begins and we see what we have out there on the basketball court. There's a chance, that a guy like Simons could even increase his trade value with the opportunity that he'll have in Boston this season. So I don't expect any fireworks to go down over the next couple weeks or so, but we will always be locked in and keeping our eyes and ears peeled to see if anything ends up materializing. So with that being said, before we get out of here, I got to ask you guys one more question. Get out your crystal balls for me and predict it. What will Brad Stevens' next move be? Will it be trading Anthony Simons? Will it be trading Georges Niang? Will it be cutting a guy like Jordan Walsh or J.D. Davison? You let me know what you think down in the comments section. Make sure you are subscribed to the channel. That will do it for today's edition of Celtics Today by Chat Sports. Lock us in for the best Celtics content all offseason long on YouTube. We'll see you guys in the next one. And as always, let's go C's.